General Hospital will reveal. Since waking up from her critical condition, Carly no longer seemed like herself. Her eyes were vacant, her reactions sluggish, and anyone who interacted with her could sense that something inside her had changed forever. Every effort by Jason, Jocelyn, and Drew to help her recall the real events proved futile, as Brennan had implanted an entirely different version of the truth in her mind. The fragmented memories Carly managed to piece together were filled with resentment toward Sonny. She couldn't remember exactly why, but the pain and betrayal seemed deeply ingrained in her subconscious, convincing her that Sonny was the one responsible for her suffering. Brennan didn't just sit back and watch, he actively manipulated Carly's thoughts at every turn. He stayed by her side with a sympathetic expression, whispering gentle yet dangerously suggestive words. He spoke of Sonny's so-called cruelty, of how he had tried to warn her but she had refused to listen, and how she was now paying the ultimate price for her blind trust. Whenever Carly hesitated, Brennan presented fabricated evidence, doctored recordings, distorted stories, all reinforcing the idea that Sonny had betrayed her in the worst way possible. With each passing day, Carly drifted further into the illusion Brennan had created, unable to discern reality from the falsehoods embedded in her fractured mind. Jocelyn was the first to sense that something was terribly wrong. She noticed how her mother no longer reacted to happy memories the way she used to, and more disturbingly, how Carly seemed indifferent, even distant, whenever Sonny was mentioned. Unwilling to accept this, Jocelyn threw herself into uncovering the truth, determined to find out who was exploiting Carly's vulnerable state. But Brennan had already anticipated this. He meticulously orchestrated events to isolate Jocelyn, even planting seeds of doubt in Carly's mind against her own daughter. Tensions between them escalated, with Carly constantly pushing Jocelyn away, choosing to trust Brennan more and more. Meanwhile, Sonny began to suspect that something wasn't right. Every attempt to reach Carly was met with hostility, as if she truly believed he was her enemy. Jason, too, sensed the danger, especially with Brennan's growing influence over Carly. He decided to retrace every lead, determined to uncover what had really happened the night of the poisoning. As dark secrets slowly unraveled, the question remained, was it already too late to bring Carly back before she was completely lost to Brennan's control? Since waking up from her critical condition, Carly no longer resembled the strong, resilient woman her loved ones once knew. Her eyes, once filled with determination, were now vacant and distant. Her responses were sluggish, her emotions dulled, as if a part of her had been erased. Every attempt by Jason, Jocelyn, and Drew to help her piece together the truth ended in frustration, as Brennan had already planted an entirely different version of reality in her mind. The fragmented memories Carly managed to recall were warped, filled with resentment toward Sonny. She couldn't remember why, but the overwhelming feeling of pain and betrayal felt undeniable, as though Sonny was the one responsible for everything she had suffered. Brennan, however, didn't merely stand on the sidelines, he played an active role in shaping Carly's new reality. He stayed close, offering her a false sense of comfort, whispering words of manipulation with calculated precision. He painted a sinister picture of Sonny, convincing Carly that he had betrayed her in the worst possible way. Each time she expressed doubt, Brennan was ready with fabricated evidence, altered recordings, twisted accounts, and misleading information, carefully designed to reinforce her growing hatred toward Sonny. The more she heard, the more she began to believe it. Confusion blurred the lines between truth and illusion, leaving Carly utterly vulnerable to Brennan's influence. Jocelyn was the first to sense something was terribly wrong. She watched in horror as her mother recoiled from Sonny, the man who had once been the center of their family. No longer did Carly react with warmth at the mention of his name. Instead, she seemed cold, indifferent, as if the bond between them had been severed entirely. Jocelyn refused to stand by idly and let this happen. Determined to uncover the truth, she began investigating, convinced that someone had tampered with Carly's memories. But Brennan had foreseen this obstacle. He meticulously laid out his next move, ensuring that Jocelyn would be seen as an outsider, an enemy, even to her own mother. Before long, Carly began to view Jocelyn's persistence as interference rather than concern, and their relationship grew strained. Each time Jocelyn pleaded with her to remember, Carly pushed her further away. Brennan's hold over her was growing stronger by the day. But he wasn't done yet. Brennan was a master of psychological warfare, and he knew that in order to secure his control over Carly, he needed to dismantle the people who might try to save her. His next target was Michael. Under the guise of concern, Brennan penned a letter addressed to Michael, carefully crafting each word to play on his emotions. In the letter, he painted a grim and unsettling picture of Carly's condition, emphasizing how fragile and defenseless she had become. He described a woman who was lost, broken, unable to protect herself. But the true venom of the letter lay in the subtle yet deliberate falsehoods Brennan wove into it. He didn't just warn Michael of Carly's vulnerable state, he planted the idea that Carly had turned her back on Sonny completely. He made it seem as though she had finally seen Sonny for the monster he truly was and had chosen to distance herself from him entirely. According to Brennan's carefully chosen words, it was Sonny who had pushed Carly into this state, Sonny who had destroyed her, and if Michael truly wanted to protect his mother, he needed to act immediately. The implication was clear: Sonny could no longer be trusted. As Michael read the letter, a storm of emotions overtook him: confusion, fear, anger. The word struck a nerve. Had Sonny really done something to push Carly this far? Why was his mother so unresponsive to those who loved her? The thought of his mother in such a vulnerable state, while Sonny continued to move through life as if nothing had happened, ignited a fire within him. He needed answers. More than that, he needed to act before it was too late. Meanwhile, Brennan watched from the shadows, knowing that his plan was falling into place. He had successfully driven a wedge between Carly and Jocelyn, and now, he had set the foundation for Michael to turn against Sonny. He was dismantling their family from the inside, piece by piece, and soon, there would be no one left to save Carly from his grasp. When Michael received the letter, an unbearable weight settled in his chest, pressing down on him with every word he read. The carefully crafted sentences painted a bleak and terrifying picture of Carly's condition. Brennan described her as weak, vulnerable, unable to protect herself. The image of his mother, once strong and unwavering, now reduced to such a fragile state, filled him with an overwhelming sense of urgency. But it wasn't just the descriptions of her deteriorating state that disturbed him, it was the insidious implications woven between the lines. The letter claimed that Carly had turned her back on Sonny completely, that she no longer trusted him, that she saw him as the source of her suffering. Brennan's words carried an unmistakable warning: if Michael truly cared about his mother, if he wanted to save her, he needed to act immediately. The underlying message was clear. Sonny was no longer to be trusted. Michael felt a familiar anger rising within him, a mixture of frustration and fear. His relationship with Sonny had been strained for years, but this wasn't about past betrayals or unresolved conflicts. This was about Carly. Whatever had happened to her, whatever had been done, she was now in the hands of someone who sought to control her, and he could not allow that to continue. Without hesitation, he abandoned every obligation he had, booked the next available flight, and returned to Port Charles with a single goal in mind: to get his mother away from Brennan before it was too late. By the time Michael arrived, the situation had already spiraled beyond anything he could have anticipated. The moment he stepped into the hospital, the air felt different, thick with an unspoken tension. Carly was no longer the woman he had known. Physically, she was still there, but the spark in her eyes, the fire that had always defined her, was gone. She sat in her hospital bed, silent, detached, as if lost in a place where no one could reach her. Every movement she made was slow, uncertain, as though she no longer trusted her own thoughts. The sight of her in such a state sent a cold chill through him. It was worse than he had imagined. Something had taken hold of her, something deeper than physical pain. She wasn't just recovering from poisoning, she was unraveling under the weight of carefully constructed deception. The damage wasn't to her body, but to her mind. Michael studied her closely, searching for any trace of recognition in her expression. There was a flicker of hesitation, a brief moment where something familiar seemed to surface, but it disappeared just as quickly. He could feel it slipping away, as though she were caught between two realities, unable to distinguish which was real. The longer he looked at her, the more he realized how deep Brennan's influence had already seeped into her consciousness. What unnerved him most was the way she glanced toward the doorway, as if seeking silent reassurance. There, standing just beyond the threshold, was Brennan. He observed with quiet satisfaction, his posture relaxed, his demeanor unreadable. There was no need for words, the moment spoke for itself. Carly wasn't just under his influence, she was looking to him for guidance, for security, for the version of reality he had crafted for her. A sinking feeling took hold of Michael as he grasped the full extent of the situation. His mother had been manipulated, not through brute force, but through a slow, insidious erosion of her identity. Brennan had rewritten the narrative of her life, poisoning her perception of the people she had once loved. Every moment that passed only solidified his control, pushing her further away from those who would fight to bring her back. Michael knew he needed to act, but any misstep could drive her even deeper into Brennan's grasp. He had returned with the intention of rescuing her, but now, he realized that undoing what had been done would not be as simple as removing her from Brennan's presence. The damage had already taken root, and it was spreading like an infection. If he wasn't careful, he could lose her completely. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Port Charles, Sonny felt an unshakable sense of unease. Every attempt to see Carly had been met with resistance, every effort to reach out was ignored or deflected. The explanations given were always the same: she needed time, she needed space, she wasn't ready to see him. At first, he had accepted it. He had believed that after everything she had been through, she needed the opportunity to heal in her own way. But as days passed and the distance between them grew, doubt crept in. Something wasn't right. The first confirmation of his fears came when Jason reached out, his tone uncharacteristically tense. What he revealed sent a jolt of alarm through Sonny. Carly wasn't simply recovering. She was being controlled. Whatever had happened in that hospital room, whatever had been whispered into her ears, had taken hold of her completely. Sonny wasted no time. He arrived at the hospital within minutes, urgency in every step he took. The moment he saw Michael standing outside Carly's room, he knew the situation had escalated. The look in Michael's eyes told him everything: frustration, desperation, but most of all, helplessness. Carly was inside that room, but the woman who had been his partner, his ally, the mother of his children, was no longer the same. Something had changed, something profound and dangerous. As he moved toward the door, a thought settled deep within him. He had spent years protecting her, shielding her from threats, standing by her side through every hardship. But now, the greatest danger wasn't from an enemy he could fight or a war he could win with force. The greatest danger was the war happening inside Carly's own mind. And this time, he wasn't sure if he could save her before it was too late. As the storm of deception deepens, one truth becomes undeniable: no one can predict how this tragedy will unfold. The intricate layers of manipulation surrounding Carly, the battle for control over her fractured mind, and the inevitable clashes within her family have set the stage for an explosive confrontation. The stakes have never been higher, and the road ahead is paved with uncertainty, betrayal, and devastating consequences. Carly's identity, once defined by her resilience and unwavering strength, is now being rewritten by Brennan's relentless psychological manipulation. Every whispered lie, every distorted memory he plants in her mind, further distances her from the people who love her most. The foundation of her past has been eroded, leaving behind only the warped reality Brennan has carefully constructed. As a result, her trust in Sonny, once unshakable, has crumbled, replaced by confusion, fear, and misplaced hatred. She no longer sees him as the man who has stood by her through countless trials but as the very reason for her suffering. Michael, fueled by desperation and an unbreakable love for his mother, has returned with the sole purpose of saving her. But what he finds is far worse than he had imagined. Carly, the woman who had always been a force to be reckoned with, now appears lost and unrecognizable. She hesitates when she sees him, her eyes clouded with uncertainty, as though she can no longer distinguish between those who seek to protect her and those who intend to control her. The slow realization that she no longer fully trusts him, that she has begun to believe Brennan's lies, is a crushing blow. Yet, despite the odds stacked against him, Michael refuses to give up. At the same time, Sonny's world is beginning to unravel. The distance between him and Carly is no longer just emotional, it has become a deep chasm, widened by forces he does not yet fully understand. He has faced enemies before, fought battles to protect the people he loves, but this is unlike anything he has encountered. Carly is not simply in danger, she is being turned against him. And if Brennan succeeds, he may lose her in a way far worse than death. Jason, ever the loyal friend and protector, is watching closely, piecing together the fragments of this growing nightmare. He knows that time is running out, that every day Carly spends under Brennan's influence is another step toward losing her forever. But how does one fight an invisible enemy, a battle that is being waged not with weapons, but with the slow, insidious corrosion of the mind? Meanwhile, Jocelyn refuses to stand idly by. She has always looked up to her mother as a pillar of strength, but now, for the first time, Carly needs someone to fight for her. Yet, despite Jocelyn's best efforts, she finds herself shut out, her words dismissed, her pleas falling on deaf ears. The person sitting before her is no longer the mother she knew, but a shadow of the woman who had once stood unshaken in the face of adversity. The realization that Brennan has not just taken advantage of Carly's weakened state, but has actively poisoned her against those who love her, ignites a fire within Jocelyn. She will not let him win. But Brennan has already thought several steps ahead. He knows the strength of Carly's family, the loyalty that binds them together, and he is prepared to exploit their desperation. His manipulation of Carly is not simply about control, it is about dismantling her support system, ensuring that when they come for her, she no longer believes in them. His influence is spreading like an infection, tainting everything it touches. And yet, the battle is far from over. The fight for Carly's mind, for her freedom from the chains Brennan has placed on her, is only just beginning. Michael will not rest until she is safe. Sonny will not accept defeat. Jocelyn will not stop fighting. Jason will not allow the woman he considers family to be lost to this twisted game. But time is running out. Every moment that passes solidifies Brennan's hold over Carly, pulling her further from the truth. The final confrontation is inevitable, and when it comes, it will be a collision of past and present, of deception and truth, of love and manipulation. For fans of General Hospital, this is not just another storyline, it is shaping up to be one of the most intense, emotionally charged sagas in the show's history. The stakes have never been higher, and the fallout will be unforgettable. As the battle for Carly's soul rages on, one question lingers. Will she find her way back before it's too late, or has Brennan already won? One thing is certain, no one will want to look away as this gripping drama reaches its breaking point.